These are instructions for the Strutmasters rear strut conversion installation for the Mercedes S500. These instructions will fit year models 1992 through 1998. First, access the trunk of the vehicle to remove the upper shock mounts. The rear trimming will also need to be removed to gain access to the upper shock mounts. Next, locate and remove the nut on the upper shock mount. This nut needs to be removed before raising the vehicle. You will also need to use an Allen wrench during the removal of the nut to prevent the shock from spinning. Once the upper mount nut has been removed, the vehicle can be raised to remove the bolts that hold the lower shock. Once the vehicle is safely secured on jacks, remove the rear wheel. And always remember that safety is an issue. Using a flat screwdriver, pry off the hydraulic valving bracket. Now bleed the hydraulic pressure from the shock by opening the valve. Once all of the hydraulic fluid has been drained from the shock, close the valve and remove the bleeding tube. The valving bracket arm needs to be tied so that it is facing horizontal to the ground. This procedure prevents pressure from building in the hydraulic line due to the removal of the hydraulic shock. The arm will remain in this position permanently. Now remove or cut the shock hydraulic fluid line from the fitting that's located at the chassis. Always wear your eye protection during this procedure. Pressure may still be on the line, causing residual hydraulic fluid to spray when removed from the fitting. Now use the brass cap supplied with the new kit to cap the end of the existing line. Attach a spring compressor to the factory coil spring, then remove the nut and bolt from the lower shock. Now remove your factory shock from behind the brake line. Wear your eye protection. Remember that residual hydraulic fluid may still flow from the cut line. Now attach the second spring compressor onto the factory coil spring. Tighten the spring compressors and ensure that both sides are snug. This helps to ensure that the spring is not putting pressure on the control arm. Now remove the nut to the upper sway bar mount. Next, remove the nut on the lower sway bar mount. Using a flat screwdriver, remove the sway bar. Be careful. The bar may drop once it has been disconnected. Use a jack stand and raise the lower control arm about 1 to 2 inches. Check the spring compressors to ensure that they're still tight and retighten the compressors if they have become loosened. Now remove the lower control arm bolt. You may need to adjust the jack under the control arm for easy removal of the bolt. Pull the hub assembly away from the lower control arm. Once the hub assembly has been cleared, the control arm can be lowered. The coil spring is now ready for easy removal from the vehicle. Locate and remove the rubber isolator that's on the old spring. The isolator may be stuck to the vehicle if it's not located on the spring. Keep the isolator since we'll be using it with the new spring. Now remove the coil spring suppressors from the old coil spring. Remove the strut assembly from the box and confirm that there are 2 of each item that comes with your kit. Locate and separate the puck, the bolt, the nut, and the washers from the kit. Now place the 2.5-inch washer and the bolt into the pocket that's underneath the control arm. Install the black puck, the large washer, the lock washer, and the nut onto the large bolt and tighten the nut. Take the new spring foot that is included in the kit with the spring step facing inside the vehicle and place it directly over the puck. Notice that the new coil spring has a flat part. This will always go in the up position. The old isolator is going to fit on the top of the coil spring, and always position the lower coil spring to fit right into the step of the new foot. Attach your 2 coil spring compressors to your new coil spring and compress the coil spring about 2 inches. Now install the new coil spring into the vehicle, going behind the brake line and onto the lower control arm. Always ensure that the coil spring is sitting properly on the rubber foot, and raise the control arm by placing a jack under it. Once the control arm has been properly aligned, insert the bolt to reattach the lower control arm to the hub assembly. Now remove the jack and ensure that your spring is in the correct position on the rubber puck. After you have ensured that the coil spring is in the proper location, remove the coil spring compressors. Now it's time to reinstall the sway bar link by working it through the hole in the bottom of the control arm. First, reconnect the bottom of the sway bar link, then jack the control arm up to connect the top of the link. Now remove the jack and tighten the control arm bolt and both upper and lower sway bar links. Now take your new shock and put it behind the brake line, into the tunnel, and back down into the control arm. First, reconnect the lower shock by inserting the shock bolt through the control arm. Now attach the rear wheel and lower your vehicle. This will allow the top of the shock to insert itself through the hole. Before the vehicle has been completely lowered, have a partner go to the trunk and help to guide the shock pin through the hole. Now attach and tighten the nut to reconnect the top of the shock. Remember that an Allen wrench is needed to keep the shock from spinning. Now it's time to reinstall the trunk interior panels. After completing the Strutmasters strut conversion, always ensure that the reservoir for the power steering hydraulic fluid is topped off. Access the hydraulic fluid reservoir at the door located in the balance panel under the hood of the car. While the engine is running, pull out the plunger and check the fluid level to ensure that the fluid is always at its proper level. Never use anything but approved Mercedes oil. Check your owner's manual or call your local Mercedes dealer for further information. This completes the installation of the rear Strutmasters conversion kit for the Mercedes S500.